Hey everybody, this is Joe from House of Stereo, and it's T+A Weekend, so we have a couple of really cool things here for you to see, and Dave Nauber, T+A North America CEO, is here with us. We've got the monoblocks, we've got the new Solitaire S540s, of course my SD3100, which is my favorite DAC, the P3100 by T+A. VPI turntable, Synergistic Research cables, and I got to tell you, this is a badass system.
What about the Wolf server?
Well, and of course, I worry about tooting my own horn, but that's all right.
Yeah.
So of course, the Wolf Audio Systems Red Wolf 2SX, our top-of-the-line server, is also driving the system. In fact, that's driving all the audio in the whole building, actually. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Solitaire S540s. The Solitaire line, I first saw them in, I think, 2016, and that was when, my love affair with T+A started. New York Audio Show, Jim Shannon was there, and so we really kind of started finding out about T+A, and what a lot of people don't realize is, while they're best known for their electronics, Siggy, the founder, they were a speaker company. He got into the electronics a little bit later on, and so now they're best known for their electronics. But the Solitaires are, the culmination of all of their learning over many years. So there's been many different versions of the Solitaire. These are the latest ones. So here for the weekend, we have the S540s, we have the S530s that we'll show you a peek of later, and then we have the S430s, which are actually behind the camera. These are one of the best speakers I've ever heard, and there's a couple of technologies that me personally I'm unfamiliar with, so I'd asked Dave to answer some questions. So first off, and here I can come around this side. So what's with the oval drivers, the mid-range?
Well, first of all, Joe, let me say thank you for letting us be here at House of Stereo. We really appreciate your support. The chance to show all three of the new Solitaire models. They're just coming into the U.S. now, so okay. It's a really great opportunity for us to be able to showcase these models in such a cool new store. So really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
The oval drivers are part of one of the more significant design features, which is what we call a line array. So you'll notice that there's a very long tweeter. This is a ribbon tweeter, and then we have 7 oval drivers. And together they produce a sound wave that is cylindrical in shape.
Okay.
And so one of the things that you might realize about an oval shape is that it will have more dispersion horizontally than it will vertically.
Okay.
And that is consistent with what happens with the cylindrical wave as it comes off of the front of the loudspeaker. Ideally, the center of the mid-range and the center of the tweeter would be in line with one another.
Right.
So that cylindrical wave could be as perfect as possible. And
right.
So in order to approach that, we want the center of the mid-range driver to be as close to the tweeter as we can get it. If we wanted to have this much surface area and it were a round cone,
right.
It would be further away.
Right.
So it helps us make the cabinet itself more narrow.
Right.
It helps us get these two groups of drivers together to produce the best possible cylindrical wave.
And yeah, so the edge of that ribbon tweeter is 2.5, maybe 3 inches from the center of the mid-range.
Right. That's right. And then you'll also notice that there's a special shape called the wave guide on both the tweeter and the mid-range, and so that helps the sound that comes from both of those to integrate properly.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
And it does so at the crossover frequency. So another important design characteristic is that design feature is that the mid-range works throughout the mid-range,
right.
without any crossover getting in the way.
Right.
So it's unusual in that respect. The tweeter operates all the way down to 1800 hertz.
Okay.
And then the mid-range operates from 1800 down to 180.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very broad range,
yeah.
Without any crossover in between.
Right.
Another advantage of being able to go down to 180, which is possible because you have so much surface area with all these drivers. You can imagine if it was 1 or 2 ordinary mid-range drivers, it'd be a lot smaller,
Right.
and you couldn't produce very much bass.
Right.
But with all of this surface
That's-
area,
yeah.
you can go down to a nice low frequency, and that's really important because you have woofers on the sides. Now, some people go like, "Oh, I don't know about woofers on the sides. That's a bit,
You know, in my listening, I'm on board.
Yeah.
I'm 100% on board.
it can work perfectly.
Yeah.
But you have to design it correctly, obviously.
Right.
So, one of the problems that a lot of speakers where woofers are on the side might have is the woofers operate at too high a frequency.
Okay.
And so they become more directional.
Right.
And so what you want is for the woofers to operate only at very low frequencies so that they're not directional. You could say, well, what if we put these 4 woofers, there are 2 on each side, what if we put all 4 of them on the front? Well, you know,
Right, yeah.
the speaker, it'd be this tall.
Yeah.
And the bottom woofer would be really close to the floor.
Right.
Neither is a good solution.
No.
So this is nice and high off the floor.
Right.
And it's only producing the woofers are only producing very low frequencies.
Okay. So, and so that's why, so we have such a wide band of mid-range coverage.
Yes.
Because these are just dedicated to the extreme low end. Or
Right.
not extreme, but the
Yeah,
low
the
end.
real low end without having to operate higher in frequency.
Now, how far do these go down?
Actually, I don't even know the official answer to that.
Yeah.
Let's just say very low.
Yeah. No, and listen, last
Well,
time.
it's in the 20s. I just don't happen to remember off the
Yeah,
top
no,
of my head.
yeah, I know. Those specs often
Yeah.
escape.
Well, one of the things to point out about the deep bass is that this is a sealed enclosure,
Okay.
and good engineering always takes into account all the objectives and makes the right compromises. If you can do it, a sealed enclosure can deliver the lowest distortion bass, so it's
Right.
the cleanest, best possible bass.
Right.
The drawback is typically that you don't produce quite enough of it.
Right.
And so almost all the speakers you see on the market, they have a port or a vent that lets the designer tune the bass to deliver more of it,
Right.
even though it's not quite as accurate.
Okay.
This is a large enough cabinet, and we have 4 drivers that we can produce extremely accurate and very deep bass.
Yeah.
If we look at the S540, which is the other model, you'll see that the mid-range and tweeter array, it's exactly the same.
Right.
But there's only 2 woofers, 1 on each side instead
Right.
of 4.
Okay.
And since the cabinet is about 8 inches shorter, it's not big enough to operate as a sealed enclosure.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's a ported design.
Okay.
So there are different solutions depending on.
Yeah. That's all right. So that's really, so it's not just a scaled down version, it's a different animal entirely. So there may be use cases where that's, you know,
That's the better choice
yeah.
because you have the smaller room, and
Right.
but you want this quality level.
Right. Now, you know what's funny is this technically is the smaller room to the big, you know, so the Solitaire S 530s are out, and we'll show you some pictures and some video of that room. They're out in the living room, the front of house space. So you've seen pictures of our 85-inch TV and the living room setup. They're there. So they're in a 1,500 square foot room, and it's, I mean, it's amazing.
That's that good.
It's really amazing. So we've adjusted the camera angle a little bit because I want you to be able to see these side-firing drivers, the Woofers. There's 2 on each side, so the other 2 are over here. Now, another really cool thing that the Solitaire has, I first saw it on the last Solitaire, is we actually have the switches. What are the switches doing?
Well, you have the ability to make small adjustments in the tonal balance depending on the situation you have in your room.
Okay.
So there's a bass, a mid-range, and a treble adjustment.
Right.
And you can go plus 1.5 or minus 1.5 dB
Right.
on each of those.
Okay.
And I think the important thing to know is it's not like you might think of a tone control where you insert something into the circuit that isn't otherwise there.
Right.
What this is it's just choosing different resistor values. You might think of it almost like a volume control where you go like, oh, I can't change the volume because it's a different resistor.
Right.
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
You change the volume to get the volume right.
Right.
And that's all we're doing here is we're changing the volume of the treble and the mid-range and the bass.
Right.
We're giving you the ability to do that if you need to.
You stick these in a 15 by 19 room instead of the 16 by 26 room, and you might need to turn down the bass.
Exactly.
We've got 4 drivers here per side, so 8 nearly 10-inch, I don't know what it is in centimeters, but nearly, you know, this looks to be about a 9-inch driver per side, 2 9-inch drivers per side. That's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
The ability to turn that down. And this is, you know, I got to tell you, I really liked the original Solitaire, but this is beautiful. You know, the lines.
We're super happy with the finish quality we've gotten with these. They're available in 3 different finishes. So you have, this is obviously the silver one. There's a piano black lacquer, which is gorgeous. So, you know, if you look at the quality of it, it's just, it's amazing how beautiful. Right. And then there's a third, which is a wood finish that we call macassar. Yeah. And it's, we have photos of it on the website, so you can see what the wood grain looks like. But, and the 530s are in the finish.
We're gonna,
so
we'll take the camera in this video. We're gonna go out to the living room, and there's a lot of natural light, so you can really see the beauty of this wood finish.
And then lastly, I would say that the front baffle, which is black on this model, could also be purchased in silver. So you can have black or silver with any of the 3 finishes.
Okay, so dial it into your aesthetics.
Yep.
The wife's aesthetics. You know.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes. As long as I get a pair in. Well, they were, you know, extremely well received. So the, you know, this shop is fairly new. We're a couple months old. We have not yet had the opportunity to bring these in, and so I have a pretty wide customer base here locally that knows about T+A's Talus loudspeakers, the floor standers and the bookshelves. We've had those for a long time. My father owns the Talus floor standers, so we know what T+A speakers can do. But this is the first opportunity for a lot of our local guys to hear a speaker on the level of the Solitaire. And you know, Jim last night, you know, we got a couple of guys. We've got some guys who are now really rethinking what they know about speakers. So that's an electrostatic array. It's
it's a what we call a magnetostatic.
Magnetostatic.
So, yeah. So it operates in some ways like a conventional speaker in that you have a voice coil that's on a membrane and and magnets that go behind it. Together you have so much surface area that the membrane doesn't have to move very far at all to produce the correct level. Right. And super fast. So it goes up to above 50 kilohertz in frequency response. Amazing. One other thing I would say, I mentioned earlier the cylindrical wave. One of the big benefits of that is that it concentrates the sound toward the listener. Now, I mentioned that engineering is always involving compromises, and so the compromise you make is that there's very little sound coming from these drivers in the vertical domain. So if we had music playing right now, you and I would hear a kind of a dull sound because we wouldn't really hear this.
We're not.
And when you sit down, it's glorious. And so if you want a speaker that's great for walking around, maybe not your choice, but if you want the speaker that sounds best, if you're an audio person, sounds best in the sweet spot, it's absolutely amazing. And because it's not sending energy up to the ceiling or down to the floor, you're not getting reflections that are interfering. So it's also a more narrow horizontal dispersion than most loudspeakers. So all included, the dispersion pattern of this speaker makes it very room friendly. You don't have to have lots of room treatment because it doesn't have as many reflections as a conventional speaker.
Now, and so it is very directional, but I've sat on either side of that sweet spot talking to, you know, customer, whoever was here listening. On both sides, that's a pretty wide sweet spot. I don't want to.
It's definitely not a head in the vice solution. It just means that for the best sound, you'll be sitting down. And somewhere in the general area of in front of the speakers. And the sound that goes in other places where it would be bouncing off the walls, that's attenuated significantly, so the
Okay.
room doesn't come into play as much as with other speakers.
All right. 5 years into stereo shop ownership, you know, I know audio servers, I know digital audio like the back of my hand. I've been immersed in that for 10 years. The speaker world is something that I'm really, you know, gaining an appreciation for and really starting to understand. So what I want to know about so it's a planar magnetostatic, a la the Solitaire T's. It's a similar.
Like the Solitaire P and the PSE.
Okay. I'm sorry.
The T is a 42 millimeter.
I've got the Solitaire T on the brain for this morning. All right, now is that so a little bit more robust seeming than say Magnepan? So Magnepan is a planar magnetic speaker.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a different design because a lot of the frequencies, a lot of the things that I'm hearing are just a little bit more high level. Like it's
Well, I'll just say that it's extremely well executed. It's a tweeter design that has been developed over a very long time.
right.
And we also use this design, by the way, in the S540.
Okay.
This is an 850 millimeter design, but it's in the S540, it's a 50 millimeter design.
Okay.
So it's considerably smaller. It
Right.
still goes to extremely high frequency, but it's not a line source as this is.
Okay. Yeah, so and the reason I asked that is, you know, Jim and a couple of those other guys who were really blown away by these last night, they're Maggie owners.
Yeah,
where-
yeah, it's interesting. They were not the first people that I've seen react to the speaker who are planar loudspeaker lovers.
Right.
They're like, this sounds to me, it has the qualities of a planar speaker,
Right.
but it does some other things that the planar speaker can't really do.
The energy, the mid-range energy, and
Yeah.
that's and I love the way Maggie sounds, and I love how big they are. But one thing that I find, the dynamics, that pounding in your chest, let's say "Fool in the Rain," Led Zeppelin, you know, that drum, the drumming in there. Listening to it on Maggie's, you can have, if you have a 6-pack of Rells, you can get some of that space.
Yeah.
But that's unrealistic for a lot of our customers. So having having that beauty of the magnetostatic array plus the mid-range plus the Woofers built right in, I think that's bringing those guys to the realization that they can have both.
Right. One of the customers has literally a second pair of speakers for listening to different kinds of music.
Right.
And with a loudspeaker like this, that's not really necessary.
Right.
And which he said as well, like I could listen to everything on this.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's what's important. All right. Well, guys, we're gonna be working on more video throughout the day of the various different T+A technologies. Dave Nauber, thank you.